going on, everybody? Alongside Noah Borntrager, I'm Will Hunt, and you're tuning in to another episode of the Down South Sports Podcast. We have a special AM edition this morning. Hall of Fame high school baseball coach over here had late practice last night, so he wanted me to get up early this morning and talk a little sports and
You wanted
and
to see
hang
my
out.
pretty face this morning. Anyways.
You know what? It's why I get up. It's why I get up
That's
in the
why I
morning.
got up.
Not my wife. You. Yeah. Love you, babe. Just kidding. Anyway, we're going to get this rolling a little bit into some Hurricanes hockey because, boy, were those two performances just abysmal this past weekend against Florida. Had a back-to-back, started at home with a 6-3 loss, and then just laid an absolute goose egg on Saturday in Sunrise, 6-0. And, you know, me and you talked a little during the games, and there were a lot of soft goals, man. It wasn't even like they were, you know, I'm not an NHL caliber goalie, but at the same time, you can't be letting in backhanders from 30 to 40 feet and just letting them go through with no screen. I can understand if there was a screen in front, you can't see, but I mean, there just was nothing of the sort. I know you saw some of that, but besides the goaltending, obviously, because we're playing two AHL goalies essentially right now, waiting for Kochetkov and Freddie to get back. What do you think our biggest problem was?
Well, 1 second before the goalie situation, like why do we have Peretz there if we're not going to just at least throw him a bone and throw him a start? Or in a situation like when we're losing 6-0, I know that wasn't a score at a point, but you know what I mean, like you see that writing on the wall. We all watched that game and kind of knew it was going to happen, so why not just kind of, like, you're going to throw that game away anyways with Martin in net. Like, let's see what Peretz can do for us. But, I mean, other than the goalie, because we've discussed this, there's not much we can really do with it anyways. Unfortunately, just with how we're set up cap-wise and everything, league too, like what goalie is out there. But, I don't know. I think Rod over-juggled the lines. I'm not sure if he listened to our last podcast or not, but he did bump Fetch down to line 4 there. So he must have been on the same wave as I was, just seeing his performance and how he was just not himself at all. So, and again, even the 4th line demotion, I don't know if that did enough. So I think I'm on the page with you that he needs to go sit up in the box and get a different view or something, because even bumping him down didn't look good. So, I don't know, man. I can't remember who got bumped up to the first line, but it was a name that I don't want to see on a first line, and they don't belong in the top 6. And that's no knock on a Martin Hook or a Eric Robinson, but they're bottom 6 players. They're really good bottom 6 players, but if you're going to be the Canes where you think you're going to play and have more of these flags being tossed around in Lenovo, then we need to do something. So, I don't know. There's a lot to be said about a lot of our offense right now, too. I think it's the heartbeat is Natchez, and we're seeing that. He's on a little bit of a down. Not even down, but...
Yeah, well, only down compared
season.
Since he's been so hot. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, without him being as hot as he was, I mean, our offense is actually pretty anemic. This is probably more of the offense that we were expecting coming into this season, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think Roslovic has definitely taken a kind of a step back, and that's just me personally. I just haven't. I mean, the results are there, were there, right? And I don't always expect the results to be the way that they were with him. He was going for the Cy Young over there with six goals, no assists, or whatever he started the season with. But not much from him lately, and that's somebody I was getting hopeful for to give us some offense. So I don't know where else you can get offense at this point. Aho's not a goal scorer. That's never been his game. And that's why Svechnikov was such a big piece of this team, because he does have that elite shot. But if he's not shooting, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I will say, if Rod was listening to our last podcast episode, he probably turned it off after I called him Roderick. So I was, shooting in the dark there, seeing if it landed. But, yeah, I mean, to your point, Rod wants to play a 4-line game, 4-line type of team. And if you have to put Svechnikov on the third or fourth line and then bump up, like you said, a Martinook or a Robinson or, I'm not going to say Jackson Blake because that man's just been gold so far this year. But that doesn't work because the only way you have a four-line system that works is your best players are your best players, and they contribute night in, night out, both sides of the puck. So it's going to be tough. Right before the podcast started, I told you that Kochetkov starting practice back. He skated a little bit yesterday. I doubt we see him tonight against Seattle. I don't see that happening. I also saw something over the weekend that we signed Dustin Tokarski to the AHL squad. So not sure if that's really going to help a whole hell of a lot, but yeah, I mean, they're in a little bit of a struggle. I wish we could have played a back-to-back against another team. I don't think even when we're at peak performance that we play super good against the Panthers. I think their style is similar to ours in a lot of ways, but at the same time, they almost do it better just because they have those bigger bodies, but they're also skilled big guys. So
I think they have players that have their roles. That's the difference, right? Like a Sam Reinhart, he's a sniper. He knows what he's going to do. He took one shot at the game in Lenovo. He took one shot, one goal, right? So like that's his role. He knows his role. Like to your point, I just feel like we have a lot of players trying to do too many things. Yeah. That's and in the comparison to the Panthers at least. Like they have their guys that are going to go bang. They have their guys that are going to pass. Barkov, he's gonna win faceoffs for you, right? Verhaeghe, like they know their roles and they stick in their lanes. And I just don't know if thinking about it, I've never actually thought about it in this light, but thinking about it is like, are we trying to do too much with all of our guys?
I absolutely think so. I think a lot of our guys are good at a lot of stuff. So you look at somebody like Natchez, who this year again is on a tear, but if the rest of the team starts to slump a little bit, is he trying to overcompensate for the rest of the team and doing everything, and then maybe your goal scoring and your puck possession takes a little bit of a down when you're trying to overcompensate when you don't have someone like – if Svechnikov already had 10 or 15 goals this year, I mean, I think it's a different team. Even though we've had a good start to the year, it's just the point of everyone is contributing. To your point, everyone has a role and they're sticking to it. But the problem is, even when just one top six player is not, I don't want to say not sticking to the role, but not contributing in their role, it just trickles downhill. It just trickles down the rest of the lineup, and then you've got someone like a Jordan Martinook you're counting on to score a hustle goal or a tip goal or whatever the case is. It's tough, dude. It's tough. And like I said, that was not the team you wanted to see back-to-back. That was just not the team. I understand if Florida's not as hot as they were last year, but they are still, I think, second in their division, and they're still a phenomenal team.
They've had a tough start with Chuck was sick for like a week. And then Barkov was out for almost a month, I believe. So I mean,
but they weren't out this past weekend.
Well, exactly.
They weren't out this past weekend.
That record is not indicative of who they really are. So
yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We'll see if the Canes can flip it around tonight against Seattle. That is back in the Lenovo Center. So hopefully Rod can do a little line shuffling magic. Not over shuffling. You don't want to over shuffle that deck, but you want to get it just right. So we'll see. But, Sunday Nicole's mom's birthday was Thursday. About every 3 or 4 years, her birthday falls on Thanksgiving. So we didn't get to celebrate it. So we went over to her brother's house on Sunday, and he's a Chargers fan. So we watched the Chargers game at 1:00. It was a good game. They came away with a win against the Panthers NFC South rival Atlanta. So I like to see that. And while I'm watching the Falcons game and Chargers game, I'm just thinking to myself, they show the NFC South record, right? And before all the games Sunday, Panthers were only back 3 games. I'm watching, I'm thinking, New Orleans is garbage. Okay, I'm not worried about them. Chargers beat the Falcons. Falcons will go to 6-6, and we had a game against the Bucs, who were at 5-6 before our matchup. We were at 3-8. All of that happens. We're only down 2. Been playing great. Bryce looks like the guy. Defense looks phenomenal for who we have on personnel-wise right now. Canales is starting to actually kind of loosen up a little bit, get those fancy plays calling. And boy, it just didn't happen. And let me tell you something. As a Panthers fan, and I start just letting that little teensy little bit of hope creep in. And boy, did it just come back and bite me in the ass, because I was heartbroken after that, my boy. Heartbroken. Again, Bryce looked phenomenal. Again, he looked great. I don't care what anybody says. My man continues to stack good game after good game. He took care of the ball. When there was an opportunity to throw it away, he threw it away, saved time on the clock. Play wasn't there, just get rid of it. Don't force it. The throw, the touchdown to take the lead late in the game to Adam Thielen. Look, I mean, if that was the most Bama Bryce play I've ever seen him in the NFL. He avoids the pass rush, steps up in the pocket, looks like he's going to run, and on the run throws an absolute dot to who I think was the player of the game for the Panthers, and Adam Thielen, if you had to pick one besides Bryce. But, yeah, just a heartbreaker, dude. I mean, just an absolute heartbreaker in overtime. I still, to this day, I will never understand why the NFL does not change these damn overtime rules. Again, that's not the way the game played out, but when you're watching the game, the Panthers lose yet another overtime coin toss, and you're thinking to yourself, well, Baker's going to march down the field, they're going to score a touchdown, it's going to be over. I hate those overtime rules. I'm not a big fan of the new college rules either, like the Georgia Tech game, where you just go 2-point conversion to 2-point conversion after the first 2 overtimes. I don't like that either, but I damn sure don't like the way the NFL is set up. I don't know how you feel about that, but both teams should have a chance to control possession, and I'm sure they keep it around just because, they're glazing over the Chiefs over there. But since that always plays in their favor. But yeah, dude, did you catch the game? Were you watching?
Yeah, no, I watched the whole thing. So it was a good game, but I don't know. I think Adam Thielen definitely did stick out as far as the player of the game. I think this we can talk about kickers for probably the rest of this podcast. I know that's not a very fun topic, kind of like goalies in hockey, but where we're going here, this is 2 games about kickers. So, Eddie Pinheiro, I'm pretty sure last podcast you said something about the announcers saying he's one of the most accurate kickers in the NFL. Well,
he held the record.
Yeah.
He held the record. And again, it's a percentage thing. It's not. It's a bullshit, stat in my opinion. Because if you have someone that shoots 1 free throw in the NBA and they make it, they're 100%. So it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've never been sold on Eddie Pinheiro, but he's always been serviceable. But I mean, you always hate to boil it down to 1 or 2 plays. Any game, obviously, it's much longer than that. But I mean, you knock down a couple field goals there, you're looking way better, and I just think you play the game differently too, right? So I think Jonathan Brooks looked better too. So I think we could have rode that 2-headed monster, right, with Chuba and Brooks if we had a good lead there. But I don't know. I mean, I am hopeful. I hate to keep saying this week after week at this point is like, we're hopeful, but at least I feel like we're playing football. Like this
Absolutely.
is the first time
where
I'm like watching.
Football.
Yeah, I'm watching the game. Like this is actually fun to watch. I remember why I sat down on Sundays and dedicated that time to watch the Panthers. So I think people forget you have to learn how to be a head coach anywhere you go. Like as you progress, right? Like Dave Canales, this is his first stint as a head coach, right? So you're saying like, oh, he's loosening them up. For sure. He's finally figuring out what works in the NFL, what doesn't, how to play call, how to scheme, and set up plays later in the game, stuff like that. So I think he's going to progress just as much as we're going to see Bryce progress, and I think those are kind of going hand in hand, and I think we're seeing that play out. I think the biggest thing, too, kicker, but also our defense. That's 2 weeks in a row where we have a game basically won if we get a stop. right? And it's not a long. We're not asking for anything crazy. I mean, there was 30 seconds left, and we get a stop. We're good. But Mike Evans just absolutely eat us up. I mean, that's if
it's
you're a
typical
Panthers fan,
for him. Yeah,
you've seen that story quite a few times. So, also Bucky Irving absolutely shredded us, and that makes me quite afraid of next week. Or this upcoming matchup against Saquon. So, yeah. If you think Bucky Irving did work against us, then we have another thing coming with Saquon. So, and that's a good team, and they're in contention, so they're going to be fighting for a win. So,
I was going to say we'll get into that preview here in a second, but yeah, I do. Jonathan Brooks looked good. I'm not sure if they kind of have a game plan per week, how many snaps he's going to get and whatnot. Still bringing him back, which I'm fine with. Take your time. But he did flash, and you can see that him and Chuba are going to be that kind of two-headed monster, DeAngelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart-esque type of backfield, which is phenomenal. Especially, I still think one of the biggest stories that's not being talked about is how damn good the O-line is this year. I mean, when you watch game in and game out, especially these games since Bryce has started to been slinging it, I mean, they're top 5 O-line in the league every single week. And when you compare it to last year's O-line, I understand that Bryce, wasn't playing the way he's playing right now. But every time the ball touched my man's hands, there was someone in the backfield. Like as soon as he received the snap, there was someone blowing past the left tackle. There was someone blowing through the center. They are, and again, this is what happens when you pay, $150, $170 million toward 2 offensive guards to kind of ensure the middle of that line. You actually get protection. So a huge shout out to the O-line so far this year. I think they've been phenomenal. Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis kind of setting the tone inside, which I think is awesome. But Adam Thielen, phenomenal. Let's real quick. I got to show the catch in overtime. I mean, it was beautiful. I was watching. I couldn't believe what was going on. But let's turn that volume off here. This was on a fourth down in overtime. And that was under pressure. The Bucs sent the blitz. Bryce, not the best position throw, but he gave Adam Thielen a chance. And my man, just, the great white hope. It was phenomenal. It was great. And unfortunately, the next play, you get a fumble from who's been probably the Panthers' best offensive player so far this year in Chuba Hubbard. I was being a little ridiculous. I was so mad at Hubbard in that time, but at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, bro, all he's done this year, and then you think about the kicks that were missed, we shouldn't even been in this position. I know it's never on one player when you make one mistake that loses the game, but when you miss those 2 kicks and you could have had 6 more points, first of all, you wouldn't have been in overtime. The game would have been over. You'd have been done. But I just love that when they panned over to the sideline and Chuba was over there and you could tell he was upset, so many guys came up and just patted him on the back like, hey, we're good. You're good, man. Don't worry about it. You'll get him next time. Like, keep your head up. And I think that goes back to the story from last week when obviously this wasn't recorded, but all the guys talking about Bryce's conversation he had with him, his speech after the Chiefs game, and essentially said like, hey, this wasn't a fluke. This game against the Chiefs wasn't no fluke. This is who we are. We're going to keep continuing to build. And, you heard again, I know I mentioned this last episode, but from Chuba, from Xavier, from Robert Hunt, from Xavier Woods, all these guys like, dude, I'm ready to run through a damn wall for Bryce Young. Like, this is our quarterback. This is the guy. And he's starting to kind of find his voice. Again, he's not a super outspoken guy, but I think you kind of have to be once you get into the league. It's a little easier to be a little more reserved in college. But, man, it's just you know what? Let me pick a bone. Real quick. There's a guy, and I don't remember his last name, but his first name's Dimitri. And he's a part of OG Triangle Media with Ovius and Gilio. And he does a show with Lauren Brownlow called This Team Is Killing Us. And they do an episode maybe once or twice a week specifically on the Panthers. And after this past game against the Bucs and the past game against the Chiefs, he's talking about how the Panthers left one out there. And yeah, they did. They could have won those games. But my man is focusing on the damn negatives over the last 2 weeks. And before that, when we were playing like the worst team in the league, you just wanted to move it toward next year and all these different things. Like, brother, acknowledge the positives. Acknowledge it. For the last year and a half, we've been talked about as this joke that traded away all of our assets to get this guy, Bryce Young, who hadn't showed anything, and now he's starting to look like the guy that you traded all that for and drafted. Accurate, smart with the ball, savvy, whatever you want to call it. But, bro, it just irks me when I hear him talk about that. Like, yeah, you left one on the field against the best team in the league last week. Bro, as much as I can't stand the guy, Mahomes is that guy right now. I understand you left a little too much time, but what do you want this defense and this offense to do? I mean, the offense is vastly improved. They still have a couple holes. Yeah, they're young. Yeah, the defense, you're playing third and fourth stringers on most other defenses in the league. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but bro, it just irks me. Like, give them some positives for, like you said, you're watching the game, you're like, damn, this is football. Like, this is awesome to see. They're actually gelling as a team. So I don't know if you've ever heard them talk, but it gets under my skin hearing that stuff.
No, I mean, I haven't heard any of that, but I mean, I just think, I think people want to see the negatives more than the positives sometimes, honestly. And to your point, right, it's like we're finally seeing some positive regression that we were expecting all this time. So and the season's honestly already, I mean, you said that we're kind of in contention prior to that game.
That's gone. Yeah, that's gone. That's gone.
Sunday.
That was my false hope.
Right. So, and I mean, everybody kind of knew, like, yeah, you're in contention, but, like, are you really? We have the most undrafted free agents on the defensive side of the ball, so what do you expect there? I don't know. I think looking forward to next year is the right way or lens to look at it, right? But look at it in a positive light. Look where we can go. Look we add a couple pieces to the draft, sign a couple guys in free agency, and now, I mean, like you said, this division is not looking good, right? Yep. I mean, Kirk Cousins, I was a little afraid of Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, but I'm no longer afraid of that. So, where are we looking at? Derek Carr and the Saints? No.
I think your biggest opponent's going to be the Bucs.
Right, and I mean, we proved that we were right there with them. We're a couple pieces away. And so for us to sit here and say in December that we're a couple pieces away, looking 2 months ago, blow up the whole thing, right? Blow up everything. Just trade Bryce Young, trade this, trade that. Like, but now we're a couple pieces away. And that's I don't think a lot of people see that change in the last month, right? And I think the benching Bryce Young was the best thing that could have ever happened, right? And honestly, I don't know if he gets another opportunity if Andy Dalton doesn't get in a car wreck.
100%.
I think Dave Canales is a competitor and he wants to win football games. He doesn't care too much, honestly, from my point of view. He hasn't cared too much about development and giving these guys playing time. He wants to go out there and win football games.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to put the best player out there in the moment, not projectable. So, but I'm obviously happy that Bryce got his opportunity and proved that, and now we don't have to even think about getting a quarterback in the draft. There's not a good one in the draft, but we don't even have to consider it. So now we can just look on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, best, like you've said the last couple episodes, best player available on the defensive side of the ball.
And again, the line or
I mean, look, it's when you look at the Panthers' defense in the first half, they were all over what the Bucs wanted to do offensively. They couldn't do anything. I mean, Bucky Irving, he was somewhat successful, but he didn't look like he did in the second half, and it's just like all of a sudden they just fell off a cliff. So, it's obviously frustrating to see when you just look at it from face value and you don't look into the fact, like we talked about, you got a lot of guys that aren't capable starters, I guess, in the league, mainly on the D-line. Again, let's look at the defensive side of the ball for next year. Jadeveon Clowney, You get Derek Brown back, who's your best defensive player. You lost him in the first game of the year against New Orleans. You can throw a Shy Tuttle in there if you don't go D-line. I think we're slated right now, the updated draft order, I think we're 5th. I didn't see what it was after the Browns game last night, but before that we were 5th. If you pick a Mason Graham out of Michigan to go alongside Derek Brown. So you got Clowney, Derek Brown, let's just say Mason Graham for hypotheticals, or Shy Tuttle, who can slot in right there next to him, or A'Shawn Robinson, and then you got Wanham on the other side. If Shaq's healthy, and you can get Shaq back there at linebacker, Josie Jewell, and then another full offseason for Trevin Wallace under his belt, who keeps making plays week in, week out. J.C. Horn, who's had overall a great year, in my opinion, just mainly because he's been healthy, and he has shown out a little bit. He is a more aggressive corner, so there are some plays where either the double move will get him or he gets a little too aggressive and there's a holding or a pass interference call, but I still think he's our best corner. Xavier Woods at safety, still think has been playing phenomenal. And then, if you sign somebody in the cornerback or draft another guy, it's all when I was watching the game, this is a point I wanted to get to. You look at our last couple drafts, minus this past year, the 2 before that. You really, when you're a team in the Panthers position, you have to hit on at least your first 2 rounds, your first 2 picks, your first and second, if you have them. And you think back to our last, again, not this past draft, but the 2 years before that, the second round picks we had. It was Terrace Marshall. It was Jonathan Mingo. When you look at other teams that are doing very well right now who are in the same position, they had some damn good players they picked that turned out, right? Look at our draft this year. Xavier Legette. Do we agree he's going to be a damn good football player? I think so far from what we've seen. Jonathan Brooks, small sample size. He was hurt, but showing potential. Then you go to Trevin Wallace, Kentucky linebacker. Again, I think he's got good potential. Jatavian Sanders, phenomenal. I think he's going to be our starting tight end for a while. Chow Smith-Wade, Washington State cornerback, got an interception this past week, almost had a second one. He's starting to come into his own. So when you start to get these players that hit, it just makes a complete difference in your rebuild. Because once you compound draft after draft after draft, and you get at least 3 or 4 hits every draft that can turn into starters on your team, and then you've got other guys to build around that, and then you go to the free agency side of things, dude, it's like sky's the limit. And I think that Dan Morgan and Dave Canales and the whole management team and front office team and scouting and all that, I think they did a great job this past year. I think Dan Morgan's time in Seattle, and obviously it's where he met Dave Canales, I think that really helped him kind of be able to look at talent in a really good way, because Seattle for a lot of years I think always had good drafts. I think they drafted players that always contributed. So I think if we can continue to do that, sky's the limit, especially with the way the team has looked over the past 4 or 5 weeks. Dave Canales, like you said, coming into his own as a head coach. And we'll see, man. Again, it's the hope. You're a fan, right? You're always going to have hope, whether it's ridiculous, not going to happen, whatever. But you just look at the positives. We were, at the start of the season, we thought we was going to win 1 game or no games. And we won 3 so far. And could have won 5 or 6. It's not like we lost every game like the first game of the season to the Saints. These have been competitive, close games. So it's one of those things that I'm super excited about the future. Even if we lose the game, I love watching the team. Obviously, the one Sunday hurt because of the couple missed field goals, but just the competitiveness and just the guys rallying around each other and playing good football, they're fun to watch. So, I know I went on a little bit of a tangent there and a little bit of a rant, but just it looks good, and I'm excited and I'm happy for the future.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the only way to look at it at this point, right? Like, what can we get in the draft, and how can we be better for next year? And that's whatever we do now, how we produce and progress for the rest of the season. That's just gravy. Looking at the draft, though, apparently we're at 5, and we're gonna get an edge from Penn State, Abdul Carter.
Yeah, so I actually looked at that mock draft yesterday, and then I looked at another one, and they have Abdul Carter going 16 overall.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the mock drafts right now, dude, are so like all over the place.
I like Mason Ingram or Mason Graham. My bad, Mason Graham.
Watching that Ohio State game, man, he looked good. I mean,
my
again,
concern would be he's kind of a double entendre of Derek Brown.
I would take two Derek Browns in the middle.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not saying that. But I just want I want a little bit more off the edge, and I think that's why.
Yes.
I just don't.
To us.
Yeah. I mean, we lost Brian Burns, right? So like,
yeah,
we got to kind of replicate that production.
Yeah.
But
well, you could go with Mikael Williams out of Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude is freaking nature.
There's far too much to happen to really even start.
Oh, dude, we're so far away. Yeah, we're so far. There's still so much. People can prove it in these last couple, college football games. Look at C.J. Stroud. I mean, I know he was projected as 1 or 2 quarterback, but that game against Georgia, when he was at Ohio State, solidified my man being the first or second quarterback taken in the draft. So there's still a lot for these players to prove.
Yeah, and I think the college football being 12 teams is going to be a difference maker too.
Oh, yeah, dude. So, a lot of these players. Think about like in Indiana. If they end up and make the playoff, you're going to have so many eyes on that team that you probably wouldn't have had, and there could be a player there, and people are like, damn, let's take a flyer on this guy in the 2nd or 3rd round that may have been a 6th or 7th round guy or undrafted. You never know. Like you said, there's so much still to go on before this year's over, but I do think we need to look defense. The offensive line is shored up. You get another year for Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker and Jatavian Sanders and Jonathan Brooks and Chuba's there, and another year for Bryce, and I could just go on and on and on. No, I think the offense is set good.
Offensive player, it's gonna load it up too much to where you're taking touches away from Chuba, Jonathan, all those names you just
the backfield is set. The O-line is set. Bryce is set. Do not go even sniffing for a quarterback. He's the guy. Like, stick with Bryce.
You don't want Shadur Sanders?
Do what?
You don't want Shadur Sanders?
No, sir. No, sir. He can go to Dallas, and his dad can follow him and be the head coach.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, no. I did, even though we feel that way about the Panthers and Bryce Young, I did see Ian Rappaport on NFL Today, and he came out and said that apparently from the Panthers organization, they are sticking with Bryce, and they will not be looking quarterback in the draft. Hopefully it stays that way. Again, we have a long time until then.
There's just no need.
There is no need. There's no need. Even if you want to, like, you would have to reach. There's not if you had the number 1 overall pick and there was a dude that you knew was going to hit, maybe. But at the same time, even if Bryce hasn't looked the way he's looked the last 4 or 5 weeks, do not take a quarterback. Build the team up. And then in 2 or 3 years, if Bryce is not the guy, you have a phenomenal roster surrounding, and you can just go, bloop. For those of you listening on Spotify and didn't see that, little pick up and drop in. I don't understand why these franchises think a rookie quarterback can just come in and change the whole thing.
Well,
they can change the whole thing.
Look at Chicago, right? I mean, Caleb Williams is
and
getting
boy, it makes me happy.
Justin Fields treatment. He's getting like all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, you're a little selfish as a Panthers fan, not seeing him not succeed, right?
Yeah, because we heard so much shit from all the Bears fans.
Yeah, but I mean, they're giving him a disservice and they thought he was going to change the whole franchise, right? So
yeah.
And now they're on another head coach, and he's going to be on his 3rd offensive coordinator. And I mean, it's just a story that writes itself for the Bears. But we don't have to get into that.
Yeah, we could probably talk Panthers for the next 30 to 40 minutes, but I'll finish by saying we're looking good, and it's fun to watch, and that's the most important thing. We didn't have a lot of expectation going into this year, but the expectation I did have going into this year, I think we're finally starting to hit, and that's just improvement. So we'll continue to see. Like you said earlier, it will be a tough game next weekend because that is also not at home. That's in Philly, and Philly fans don't play. They ain't like us where we hold the door for people and say hello and wave good morning, and they don't do that. They don't play. So that'll be interesting. That I think that team is gonna. I don't know what we're gonna do. Because you look at that Philly defense, forget the offense for a minute. I mean, our defense isn't going to stop Saquon. That's just not going to happen. But you look at their defense is like bulletproof, essentially. You've got the entire D-line and linebacker core. You're not going to be able to run through them. And then at the same time, their secondary is also really good. So how are you going to – Dave's going to have to get creative. I think that game is going to be a Dave Canales game where if we succeed, it's going to be because of the flow of the game and his play calling and his decision-making, because he has to put the team in the best position to win. That's going to be a tough one. It really is. So, all right, well, it's that time. It's that damn time. I wish we would have just not talked about it, but I called it. The rivalry game for this year, NC State, Carolina, is over. Over this past Saturday, NC State with a 35-30 win over the Carolina Tar Heels. It pretty much, in summation, that one game exemplified Mac Brown's entire second tenure at Carolina, in my opinion. You have a phenomenal offensive player that can lead a team, lead an offense, and to back it up, you just have an absolutely abysmal defense. And don't get me wrong, C.J. Bailey and State's offense, they made plays when it counted, like that one deep pass. That thing was dropped in a bucket. It was a great throw, great catch by, I think it was Noah Rogers. But you watch Carolina's defense, man. It's year in, year out. It's like they move in slow motion compared to other defenses. I don't know if that's just me seeing it through my eyes, through these, Carolina blue colored glasses, but that's why I've been pushing so far since they fired Mac to go for a defensive coach. I mean, you look at a lot of these teams in college football and their defenses, man, you can keep an offense in the game. In college football, you really can. It's not like a lot of these some offenses are, overpowered, but look at Georgia. Their offense has been lackluster this year, but because their defense is so stout, they're pretty much in every single game. But, Omarion, he did his thing. That's definitely his last game in a Carolina uniform. I foresee him skipping the bowl game and, going to the NFL. Good for him. He was a phenomenal player for us. Jacoby Criswell was just absolutely awful this game, and I think all year. I mean, I need you to talk because I'm starting to lose my words here. I'm so frustrated and I'm so upset. And then to have Mac after the game just basically saying, I agree we needed to go in a different direction, but I don't agree the way they did it. It's like, Mac, bro, you were essentially holding Carolina hostage. Every press conference you said, I'm the only reason we're this and that, and I'm the only one that can save Carolina, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Brother, you're like 90 years old. You're trying to say all these crazy things. I think he did us a disservice with the way he went out. He should have just went out and did his own thing. Behind closed doors, it could be a completely different conversation. He could have looked at Bubba Cunningham and said, I'm not going anywhere. You're going to have to fire me. I think that's how the conversation went. And I've talked to some Carolina fans. They're like, I don't like what they did to Mac and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, hey, there's always two sides to a coin, brother. There's always two sides to a coin. So we'll never know what that other side is, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the conversation's definitely, we're not getting the full story there at all, because I don't think they just fire him just to fire him. Like that there's some conversation there where, to your point, Mac's like, no, I have my contract. You're gonna have to fire me if you want me to get out of that contract. I don't know, but as far as the game goes, Dave Doran does what Dave Doran does.
Oh yeah,
finds a way into a bowl game at mediocre record and beats Carolina. So he's not going anywhere. And unfortunately, that probably means his boy Robert Nye is going to stick right beside him and call some crazy offensive plays. We don't need to bring this one up and show the people, but that 2-point conversion, that was Robert Nye special right there. Like, when does that work? When you move the entire offensive line 20 yards away from your quarterback, when does that ever work? But we don't have to get into that. Amarion Hampton, I mean, dude, I knew I was impressed with his abilities and his skills, but watching a full game of him and how he affects the game,
he's impressive
as a whole,
Yeah.
is very impressive, right? I think my favorite play, and I'm a State fan. Well, besides the Noah Rogers catch, was that shovel pass.
That shovel pass, yeah.
It was just like he knew exactly what to do. He played his role. He acted like he was blocking, flipped around, and then off of the races.
Well,
right?
you don't
So,
expect someone that big to be that fast.
he has freaking tree trunks, dude.
He's huge, but he is one of the fastest players on the field. His acceleration is just as soon as he breaks through a hole. But continue. Sorry, just love that man.
No, I mean I think he's one of the top running backs in this draft class,
Absolutely.
and I think that's to your point. There's no need for him to play in whatever crap bowl they get.
Nope.
And we'll see as far as State goes what bowl they get offered. But Dave Doran's all excited. One thing as far as the rivalry goes, and I know Dave Doran, you've gotten onto Dave Doran about hyping his boys up maybe a little too much at times.
Mm-hmm.
The flag planting needs to be addressed from college football as a whole. It's too much. Pepper spray has to be pulled out in Michigan. All this stuff.
That was definitely the craziest one. The Michigan Ohio State one was
that's the craziest
craziest
rivalry,
one.
right?
Yeah,
That's the craziest football rivalry of the day.
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at anywhere across the nation, like rivalry games, and they're planting flags on the away field.
Well, it happened 4 times on Saturday.
Right, and here
that's
comes
the
whole
first
brawl.
time we've ever had that many issues with it.
Yep. So, and I mean, there's different ways to celebrate, and I understand that it's a rivalry game, and you win at their place, and all of that stuff, right? Like, but there's different ways, and there's right ways to celebrate. And I think the college football scene needs to come out and say something.
Yeah.
That's just me personally. That's me getting on my soapbox a little bit. There's just no need for all that stuff. So I mean, they're 18-year-olds. They're at full of testosterone.
Yeah, the emotions
energy.
are running high.
Yes. So I want to see celebrations. I love to see that stuff. Obviously, as a State fan, I did kind of enjoy it. But I think it needs to be addressed. And then as far as I was very impressed with our defense. And the whole first half, both defenses were real stout, right? It was a slow start.
Were they real stout or were the offenses that bad?
Well, fair question.
Because, you said it with the Panthers, we also missed 2 or 3 field goals.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to get at. We can talk about kickers for the rest of this episode because, I mean, you're sitting there looking, and what did he miss? An extra point and a field goal, right? So...
Yeah, I think he missed 2 field goals. I could be wrong, but I think it was 2 or 3. It was bad. Yeah, it was bad.
I almost texted you that he might be an inside man, but I knew you were already fuming. So
yeah, I was pretty bad. You texted me a joke, and I went directly for your throat, and I was just like, "Damn, I don't need to text Noah right now. This is we ruined the podcast, ruined the friendship."
I didn't poke the bear anymore after that. But I mean, dude, that was a heck of a game all the way through.
Yeah, it was.
I was a little scared there at the end that we were gonna figure a way out to blow that one. And
don't worry, we had that covered for you.
Yeah,
we had that covered for you.
Try to send. I mean, Amarion did his best to send Mac off the way he kind of deserves.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm excited to see what Derek Van can do in the NFL. I think that's our next kind of best product in the NFL as a State team. But also, cornerback Jackson Vick deserves a shout-out.
No, that dude had a hell of a game.
Late in the game especially. Big pass breakup, and then that sack on the final drive for Carolina. I think that was kind of the backbreaker. So I think... We talked about Noah Rogers had a hell of a catch. I want to give your Carolina boy Culver a shout out that he had a couple hell of catches.
He did.
He had 2 real good catches, and making Criswell look way better than he deserves. So I was extremely unimpressed with him. He had a couple good passes, but he missed some wide open options where he could have had some. Touchdowns.
His arm is just not that strong, man.
No, and I'm not a big football quarterback guy, but I was looking at his feet a couple times, and he just has happy feet. He was never setting his feet. He was just always afraid, and maybe that's the pass rush from State, but I think that's just him as a quarterback. So, that was a fun game to watch through and through from the beginning. A little slow start, but once it got going in that second half, I mean, that was elite football, to be honest with you, as far as entertainment value.
Yeah, second half was fun to watch. I want to go back a couple topics because I've got a different viewpoint on the flag planting. So obviously, as a Carolina fan watching that game, did I want to see State plant the flag? Hell no. I wanted to see us go in there and fight and throw it away like we did and all this stuff. Because my emotions were running high too, right? It's a rivalry game. But, watching the first one of the day, the Michigan at Ohio State, the way I look at it is you had 4 quarters to fight to win that game, to give all you had to win that game. And if you don't put forth the effort in those 4 quarters in the game and the whistle blows and you're on the wrong side, I don't think you have a right to try and stop that other team from planting a flag in your field. You had all that time. You had 60 minutes, brother, to win that game. And you didn't make it happen. So where was all this fight after the game where it should have been during the game? Also, to your point, there doesn't need to be pepper spray, and it should be broken up. It's one of those things where, even if it's a home game for that team, get them off the field. But at the same time, that's what makes college football great. That's why I love college football, is stuff like this. You rarely see this in the NFL. Rarely. I know Nicole loves to bring up, when the Titans and Ravens a couple years ago had a little rivalry going in the playoffs, and, the Titans would go and they would be doing shit on the Ravens logo, and then the Ravens would go and scrape the Titans logo with their cleats and all these different things. But that's what I love about college athletics, is just that emotion that it brings to the game, right? So next year when Ohio State goes to Michigan, you best believe their asses are going to be on fire because they want to go take that OSU flag and put it right in the middle of the M. And that's going to be a crazy game. So I see both sides, but at the same time, I just love it. I love seeing all that stuff, man. It's what makes it great. But again, to your point, you can't be having people getting bloodied and punched and pepper sprayed in the face. It goes too far at that point. But I've also seen so far there's been quite a few transfers from NC State. KC Concepcion, he's gone. A couple other players, like a second or third string lineman, a couple secondary players for State. But, I was talking to Nicole's brother, Matt, on Sunday, and he was saying how upset he was that KC was leaving. And I said, dude, you got to think, and we've said this before, you pay KC Concepcion, you pay Grayson McCall, and that was like 90% of your NIL budget. You look at what you could have done for the offensive line and put money towards that, you probably would have had 2 or 3 more wins in this season if you had a better O-line. So it makes me think, I know you said that you think Dave will bring Robert and I back. I think he'll get rid of Robert and I just because of that whole discussion of, well, I'm the head coach, but to kind of take a little fire from underneath my seat, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator and kind of put a lot of the blame on him or them. So we'll see. I mean, not saying there's not going to be a lot of transfers out of Carolina, because I think there will be. Obviously, that always happens when there's a coaching change. The transfer portal officially isn't open, but people can go ahead and get a jump on it. So we'll see what happens from there. But one of the last things I want to say is Inside Carolina did an interview with Bubba Cunningham, and they were asking him a bunch of questions about the coaching search. And he said they have essentially like a group of advisors that they gave a list of like 30 to 35 names to them, and they go through and vet everything and kind of give them a list of the top 10 to 12, what they think. And then Bubba said they would go through and do Zoom interviews and then in-person interviews and do all this. But at the end of it, they asked him what he thought the timeline would be. He said, well, I think we'll have a hire here within the next week, which I thought was kind of shocking. I know he likes to move fast and get all this stuff done, but at the same time, this is about the time when you start to hire coaches. A little before the bowl games, before the championship games, and then, you always hear during those games like, this is, we'll just use example, Glenn Schumann's last game or last couple games for Georgia DC as he heads to Carolina next year and wants to go out for blah, blah, blah. I was shocked that he thought it would be done in a week. I would love that, and I would love for it to be the right hire. But more importantly than getting done in a week, make the right decision. Don't rush it. I mean, if you found the right guy and you feel that way, absolutely sign on the dotted line, do it. But don't hire a coach just to go ahead and get the recruiting process started and the transfer portal and all these different things. Like, I understand that's a huge deal and you need to do it sooner rather than later. I just feel like I see a lot of teams rush to do that to try and shore up some of these holes where a lot of kids are going, I don't know who the coach is be. I'm decommitting and I'm going here. I don't know who the coach is going to be. I'm transferring out. I'm going here. Things like that. So we'll see. I thought that was very, very interesting reading that last night. But yeah, we'll see where Carolina goes, man. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, there's no need to rush that process at all. I mean, you're going to miss out on some recruits and some transfers, but that's 1 year.
Yeah, right? I'd rather have the right guy for the next 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can go hit the transfer portal next year.
Yep.
No need to rush that hire, and that's for anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree, man. It was, like you said, the first half was horrible to watch. The second half was fun. I know I was going back and forth, had our buddy Grayson over that night, and boy, when they lined up for that 2-point conversion like that, Grayson literally, what are y'all doing? What is going on? Not again. So it was good, man. Going back and forth, that's what makes those rivalry games fun. But it was a game. It was a Carolina game through and through. It was
a Dave Doran game.
It's what we've come to expect out of that game. So we'll see what bowl games we get. We'll see if the Canes can turn it around tonight against Seattle. Hopefully they can. Hopefully we can shore up a little goaltending situation. And you know what? We're just going to keep being positive about the Panthers. We're going to keep on just loving those boys and don't care what all these other idiots have to say. But anyway, we'll be back here Friday, do another episode, preview the weekend, preview some college football conference championship games. There's going to be some really, really good games this weekend with possibly some high-dollar bets coming up. So maybe we'll give you a little something on that. But anyway, y'all, for Noah Bornscheger, I'm Will Hunt. This has been another episode of the Down South Sports Podcast. We'll see y'all next time.